Hey everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In today's video, excuse me, in today's video I just figured that I would sit down and do kind of like a little get ready with me. Not like a tutorial or anything, because I'm not a pro or anything like that at makeup. But as you can see, I just got out of the shower, so I'm going to do my makeup. I'm going to do my hair later just because my hair gets really frizzy right after it dries, and it takes a while to dry because I like it to air dry. So I will do my makeup or my hair later, and I'm going to do my makeup now just to kind of get that out of the way. And it doesn't take very long. And also while doing it, I was thinking of just kind of like telling you guys my labor and delivery story. Kinsley turns 6 months old tomorrow, and so it's just kind of bittersweet that she's a half-year old, like 6 months old. Like, where has it gone? And I know it just goes faster from here. Sorry about that noise if you guys can hear it. That's my breast pump. I am pumping milk for her. I exclusively breast pump. We breastfed in the beginning for the first probably 2 months. And then we had to be admitted into the hospital because she had bronchiolitis, and ever since then she has not been good at latching, and so now she just doesn't. She actually breastfed for the first time in a long time, just the other day, which was amazing. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, like, because I miss it obviously, but yeah, I think this works best for us, and so that's what we're gonna keep doing. I, like, in general have a low supply, so we have to do half and half anyways, but you know, it's okay. I'm not too worried about it, especially because she's on food now. Sorry, I'm just checking it to make sure it's okay. So yeah, so I'm almost out of my favorite foundation, so I have to use a brush to go in there and get as much out as I possibly can because it's my favorite foundation ever. But so starting with my labor and delivery story, we went to the doctor's. Well, I went because Kyle was at work. It must have been June 22nd because she was born on the 25th. It was the Friday before she was born. Yeah, so I went into just a normal doctor's appointment. By that point, I was having doctor's appointments every week. And they were always on Fridays, always on like a new pregnancy week for me. So that day I was 39 weeks pregnant. And we knew it was a girl and all of that fun stuff. And at that point, just like every other mom, I wanted her out. I wanted to see her. I wanted to not be pregnant anymore. Like, I wanted her out. And we got there and everything went fine. They took my blood pressure in the beginning and it was high. And so the nurse just kind of said, like, I'll tell her, but she probably will just want to do lab work, and just everything will be fine. So the doctor came in. So right now I'm just using like my beauty blender, or not my beauty blender, my flat brush. It's the best way that I think for my skin and for me to blend out this foundation. And then I can't ever see, so I put my glasses back on. But so I'm just blending this out everywhere. Where was I? Oh, and so the doctor came in, and make sure you get your ears. The doctor came in and she was just like, everything sounds good, everything looks good. Now it's just a waiting game for her to come. I was like, oh my gosh, come soon, come soon. And she started to leave, and I asked her about my blood pressure. Just because she didn't say anything, I think she forgot. She was like, oh, I'll have the nurse come back in and lay down for a few minutes. She'll come back in and check it again, and we'll go from there. So I laid down on their table, and every pregnant woman, every woman for a matter, knows that those tables are not easy to lay on or not comfortable to lay on for 5 to 10 minutes, especially when you're almost 9 months pregnant. Yeah. And so I laid there as uncomfortable as I could possibly be. And not only because I was pregnant, but also because, like, they're just uncomfortable. Like, they are uncomfortable in general. And the nurse came back in. She was like, I'm sure it's fine, and let's check it. And I was like, okay. And so we checked it, and it was still high. And she was like, okay, well, let me go talk to her real quick, my doctor, and see what she wants to do. And this happened the time, the appointment before as well. And they checked it again, and it had gone down. And so, like, it wasn't worrisome or anything at that point. And so this is a different shade of the same Mineral Touch Unique foundation. And so she came back in, and well, actually the nurse came back in and was like, she just wants to do lab work, but the doctor stopped her and was like, no, I'll come in and talk to her in a minute. And so she was like, the doctor will be in just a minute, she wants to speak with you before you leave. And I was like, okay. And so she came back in, and I was a little nervous at that point just because she doesn't normally come back in, and she changed her mind. And also, I'm just a nerdy, worry like type person. And so I waited for her to come back in, and she came back in, and she was like, you know what? I don't want to see where this is going to go. I don't want to see anything like that, so let's induce. And I was like, thank you. Like, I was so excited. She was like, so we'll induce on Monday because there's no immediate danger for us to induce right now. And so I was like, okay, perfect. But she put me on strict bed rest, just so that my BP didn't go up and stuff like that. Because we didn't want to, like, I was on the verge of having preeclampsia, and so, like, that's what she wanted to avoid. Sorry, I'm just seeing how this looks. Does it look too orange to you guys? One of those foundations I never really use because it always looks too orange. Ugh. How does it look so far? Like, does that look okay to you guys? Look like an okay match? I'm trying to find a new foundation because I'm almost out of this and I just want a better one. So if you guys have any, like, options or, like, what you use, let me know down below. Because I would love your opinions. I need to find a new one. And so I got out of the, I left the office planning to induce Monday, and I called Kyle, my fiance, and to tell him because I needed him to come home. Like, I was on strict bed rest. No walking, no moving, no making my own food. The only things I could get up for were to go to the bathroom and to eat. I was allowed to get up to eat, but I couldn't stand and make my own food. And so I called him. He was like, okay, well, I'll clean up my area and I'll head home. And sorry, that's like my bra. But so he came home. I called my mom, and my mom came over, and we just kind of, like, next few days spent the house getting ready. We didn't do anything. I did go grocery shopping with my mom and Kyle, not for very long, just because I started to get, like, a headache, and that's another sign of preeclampsia. And so I really just took it easy for the next 2 days. Three technically. Friday, Saturday. Well, no, 2. Yeah, 2. And so Sunday came around, and And I woke up that morning to just very uncomfortable, like super uncomfortable. And I didn't really know what it was. I wasn't having contractions, but I was just very uncomfortable. And so I went and used the restroom, and I noticed I had my bloody show. And I was like, oh wow, so things are starting to progress. Maybe I'll go into labor. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. I went ahead and blended my other eye off camera, just because I was right there. Okay, where was I? Okay, so I woke up and I had my bloody show, and I kind of just went back to bed. I was like, well, I have time. Like, nothing was, I wasn't having contractions. I wasn't, like, nothing like that. And I laid back down and I noticed I was having contractions. They just were, like, cramping. And they weren't coming very often or anything like that. Very subtle. And I just felt kind of gross after having my bloody show. And so I ended up going to take a shower. And just because I wanted to wash off after all that. And so I jumped in the shower just to kind of relax a little bit, see if things would start progressing and stuff like that. And it did. I started having regular contractions and everything like that, but they weren't painful, really. They weren't close together. And so, just a second again, my pump just ended, so I'm going to take this off so I'm more comfortable. Okay, sorry again, I am back. I just got my pump undone. It's right here. I have the Medela Sonata pump. It's a very good pump. It's a hospital grade. If you have the opportunity to get this pump, I would highly recommend it. It has worked very well for me. And it's highly recommended, and also it's hospital grade, which I was told hospital grade is the suction power is not to maintain a supply, it's to bring in a supply, so it helps pump more out, whereas other ones are to maintain a supply. And so I guess that's the difference between hospital grade and not hospital grade. I don't really know. I just know I have a very good pump, and so it works best for me. Okay, and so I got out of the shower and I went and laid back down for probably another 45 minutes, and I couldn't lay long just because I was contracting and I wasn't very comfortable. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. And so I got up and I went into the living room, and my mom was actually staying the night to help us kind of get everything ready because I couldn't get up and get things ready. And so we went to, I want to say it was Lamar's Donuts. We looked one up and we were like, let's go get donuts. Like, tomorrow we're having a baby, let's just have fun. I know I couldn't do much just because of the bed rest. And so we went in, we got donuts, and we sort of just kind of hung out. And the whole time that we were gone, I contracted and contracted, and I texted Kyle and I was like, okay, I'm having contractions, they're starting to get uncomfortable. We probably should keep an eye on them, but I'm not telling my mom because my mom is the type of person that she would have just gotten really excited. Like, it's her first grandchild, and so she was already excited, so this would have just like doubled her excitement. And so I just like ripped some of my hair out with my glasses, but sorry guys, I didn't blend this very well up here. And so we got home and we pretty much spent the rest of the day trying to get the house ready. I wanted it all clean and a couple meals made so that when we did get home from the hospital, we didn't have to worry about anything like that. And so we kind of just spent the rest of the day cleaning up the house, and just simple things like that. And just a low-key day. We just laid back, and I contracted, and I still didn't tell my mom. And so the day went on, my water hadn't broke, I was able to walk and talk and just hang out through my contractions, so I knew I shouldn't, like, there's no point in going to the hospital yet. And plus, I was going in the hospital at 6 that night. Anyways, that's Sunday night, the 24th. And so we actually went to go see a movie, Jurassic World, the newer one, the second one. And so we went to go see that movie with my parents, just kind of as a last thing that we were going to be able to do before we had a baby. And so we went and did that, and that is when my contractions started to hurt, like physically hurt, and where I would have to think through them to get through them. During that movie is when that decided to happen. And to be honest with you, I do not remember what happened in that movie. I won't say anything like that I do remember, because I don't know if everyone has seen it, but I remember very little from that movie, because I was concentrating on contracting, and I didn't want to get up and leave because I knew there was no point in going to the hospital yet. I was going to the hospital in like 3 hours, because we went and saw the movie at 3 o'clock. And so I sat there and contracted through the whole movie, which wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad, but it was definitely uncomfortable. But we all do things in life that are uncomfortable. So the movie ended, and we parted ways with my parents, and it wasn't quite time for us to get to the hospital, because we were actually really close to the hospital. We were down the street, and we weren't to check in until 6, and it was probably like 5-ish. Yeah, probably like 5:15. And so we ran to Sonic to go just grab a drink and a snack, and just kind of a little date for us, because that was the last one we were gonna have. Like, that was it. And the last one as not being parents. And so we went to, sorry, I'm looking for a palette. There it is. We went to Sonic, got drinks, I got a slushie, and I was just very uncomfortable at that point still. I had actually started timing my contractions by then, and so I was like, let's actually just go to the hospital. Let's get there and get hooked up and everything like that, and let's see if they'll check me and see where we are. And so he was like, okay. We went to the hospital, and we actually didn't bring everything in at once, just to make it a little bit easier on us, because we brought a lot of stuff because we knew we were going to be staying. We didn't know how long, just because we didn't know if we were going to have a C-section, or if we were going to, like if something were to happen and we had a C-section type thing. And so I'm going to blend that out, don't worry. I am using, for contour, Pro Artist Bronzer and Contour Palette. It was from like Five Below or something. So like nothing like, I don't know. It seems to work very well for me. But we went upstairs, and I was actually the only patient checked in at that point. Everyone else wasn't scheduled to get there until about 6 or until about 7. And so, I mean, they just kind of hung out with us and talked to us, and the nurses did. And so they got my Cervidil started. And if you don't know what Cervidil is, it is just kind of like, it's not like cotton because it does not feel like cotton anymore. It's kind of like the consistency of a tampon that you haven't used. You know how it's like packed really tight, and just kind of that feeling. And it's not that big. It's like this big and it's flat, and it lays right next to your cervix to help soften your cervix. And you can't get out of bed for a few hours, and it has a string attached to it, and it is very uncomfortable getting that in. Very uncomfortable. And so she got that in, and of course, I mean, pregnant ladies, you know it, you have to pee an hour after it goes in, and they don't want you to move for 2 hours. And so she was like, do you really have to go? And I was like, yes, like, I'm 9 months pregnant almost, I have to pee. And she's like, okay. And so I went to the restroom. She had to come back in and make sure it was still placed, make sure it was still there, because if it fell out, then I'd have to get a new one. And so it was still there. No worries about that. It actually worked out very well. I didn't have to have a new one or anything like that. And so after my Cervidil, I was still contracting regularly, and they saw that on the monitor. So I was technically in labor. When we got there, I was 2 centimeters dilated and 70% effaced. And so, sorry. We were just kind of hanging out. I figured that that's what like labor was, and so I didn't ask for any pain medicine or anything like that, because honestly I was trying to go natural. Didn't happen. It was about probably 10 o'clock, and she came in, and I was just in tears. I mean, my contractions were excruciating at that point. I couldn't fall asleep. It was like I just wanted to sleep. I knew I was having my baby the next day. Like, I wanted to sleep, and I couldn't. I was just so uncomfortable. And she was like, well, why didn't you tell me? Like, I have stuff that I can give you in your chart. There's a medication list. And she's like, let me go look and see. Sorry, I'm looking for a brush. Like, I'm missing one of my brushes. Oh, there it is. I can go see what I can give you, and we'll go from there. And I was like, okay. And so she came back, and she was like, I have a medication, it's IV, that I can give you. You can have it every hour, but I don't want to give it to you every hour, just because, like. And so I was like, okay, well, let's try it. And we'll see how it does, and go from there. And so she said, okay. And she went and got the medication, and as soon as she pushed it, I got so hot, so flustered. It was, I thought I was going to start throwing up. Like, it was rough, but it ended up working very well, and it put me to sleep. And I woke up a few hours later needing it again, and I thought it was like an hour later, and she goes, no, you slept for about 2 hours. And so I was like, oh, thank you. So I got it twice. So it was probably about 2 o'clock. I got the next one, and I was like, can I just get an epidural? Like, I changed my mind. I want an epidural. Let's get this. I hadn't even started the Pitocin yet. And she was like, I don't know. We normally try and wait until the Pitocin has started and you're a little bit further along. And she's like, let me check you and call on-call doctor and find out what she says. I was like, okay. So she checked me. I was either 3 or 4. I want to say 4 centimeters dilated at that point. So I was in labor and just progressing very slowly, I guess. And she came back and she was like, okay, well, the doctor said we could go ahead and give your epidural. I'm going to call anesthesiology, and we'll get them up here, and we'll get this placed. And I was like, thank you. And so she came up, or anesthesiology came up there. I'm going to wait to do my eyes off camera, just because I want to do like a certain look, and I go off of like a video. Hold just a second, and I will direct my attention to you guys. Okay. So, anesthesiology came in probably about 3 o'clock, maybe 2:30. I think it was like 2:30. Yeah, had to have been 2:30. And she was like, okay, signed all the consent, sat on the bed, she put it in, and it didn't hurt going in. It didn't. The only thing that hurt was the shot to numb me. That hurt a lot. But other than that, I honestly wasn't even thinking about it because I was still contracting, and like that was my main focus, was contractions. And so Kyle stood in front of me, got that placed, and as soon as we got it in and I was laying down, problem. Not because of the epidural, just because of my body and Kinsley. My BP like plummeted. I was throwing up. I couldn't move. They were trying to give me medication to bring my BP up. I had my BP was being taken every 5 minutes. Like, it was crazy. She pushed that medicine. I stopped throwing up, which was very nice. I had like thrown up all over myself and I couldn't move, and so we had to get me a new gown. Which she was very sweet about helping me clean myself up. My nurse was. I don't remember her name. She was just a very good nurse. So shout out to you. But she kind of just sat there with us for probably about 45 minutes watching my BP. I had to have that medication 3 times. And also after my BP dropped, Kinsley started having D-cells. Now, if you don't know what D-cells are, that's when the baby's heart rate drops well above what it's supposed to be. Kinsley's was normally in the 140s. That's just where her heart rate lied my entire pregnancy. That's where it lied in the hospital. And hers dropped all the way down to 50. That was the lowest it went, and it was scary. It was very scary because you just don't know what's going to happen. That happens, and then you have nurses rushing in, trying to get you on your side. They put me on oxygen, rolled me to my side, left me there for like on my side with pillows propped up, because that's how she did better. And they weren't too concerned at that point because they thought maybe she, like, I think it's called the supine position, but like in late term pregnancy, I believe it's called that. Bodies don't really, they reject the supine position because you have so much weight laying on your like certain major veins, and so they thought maybe she was laying on her cord and that my body wasn't liking that position. So they weren't too concerned about it, which was very reassuring for Kyle and I. Sorry this video is so long, but it's just, yeah, it's our story. And so they took me off oxygen, which I had to be off oxygen to start the Pitocin in the first place. And that was about probably 5 o'clock in the morning. No, it had to have been like 6, maybe 6:30. And we were just waiting for a doctor to come in. Like all the on-call doctor was there. My doctor wasn't there. There wasn't a doctor over there. And then she had a big D-cell, like a big one. The charge nurse rushed in, my nurse rushed in, another nurse rushed in. And I was like, I do better on oxygen. She put me on oxygen and everything went fine. And she was like, okay. And she kind of just ignored me, because like that's patient giving like medical advice, like not really a thing. Like it is obviously, but she was like not really listening to me, and Kinsley's heart rate didn't come up. And I'm on my side. They're pushing medicines because my BP is dropping again. I'm not throwing up, which is great. And she was like, so the oxygen helped, right? And I was like, yes, it did. Like, the oxygen helped a lot. And she was like, okay. And so she put me back on oxygen. And from then on, I was on oxygen from then until I delivered, because she kept having D-cells. And so they got a doctor over, and it actually wasn't the on-call doctor or my doctor. It was just the first doctor that was over in the office, because our office is, or like the office that I go to is connected to the hospital that I delivered at. And so he came over and he was like, okay, well, let's look at things, and maybe we should start considering the option of a C-section, but let's see how things progress. And I was like, okay. And then the on-call doctor got there and came in, and she was like, you know what, let's check you and break your water. And so, and then just kind of see where we're at from there. And so she checked me, and my water had already broke, plus there was meconium in it. So the odds were not in our favor for that delivery. Definitely not. So then I got a little worried just because meconium can be serious. I have a friend, well, more like an acquaintance. She had her first baby and was on ECMO, life support, all because meconium. She had breathed in her poop and had a huge infection, and it was very scary. I was very scared. And right in front of her, Kinsley had another D-cell, and so she was giving me medication. They were upping my oxygen, turning me on my side, and just all the same things that they had been doing. And so she watched the monitor, because that's all they can do in that moment is watch the monitor until they're like, okay, we need to get her out now. And so Kinsley calmed down. D-cell, her heart rate went back up, which was good. And the doctor looked at me and she was like, I think we should start considering a C-section if this happens again. That's going to be my next advice to you. And I looked at her and I was like, let's do it. If I can get her out safely, or if you can get her out safely, and it's a C-section, that's what I want to do. End of story. That's what I want. And she was like, well, I can offer you a C-section. Is that what you're asking? And I was like, yes, like let's do a C-section. And I didn't even ask Kyle. It didn't even cross my mind to ask Kyle. Yeah, he's standing next to me, and so I looked at him. I'm like, is that okay with you? Like a C-section? And he was like, yes, that's fine. And so she was like, well, let me go see who's in the OR and stuff like that. And she came back and she was like, we can get you in the OR at 10 o'clock. And hopefully Dr. Nichols, which will be my doctor, will be out by then, or be back by then, like back to the hospital. And so my mom showed up, gave her hugs. My mom, brother, and dad all showed up, gave them hugs. And at 10 o'clock, they came and rolled me back to the OR. I got in the OR at like 10:17. I looked at the clock, and my doctor still wasn't there, so I was like really nervous. And they moved me over, and I didn't cry at all until we got into the OR, and I just bawled my eyes out. And so, let me see. As I was laying there, my doctor peeked around the corner and she goes, Kaylee, I'm here. I'm gonna deliver your baby. Let's get this child out and let's do this. You're gonna be a mom here in a few minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I just started crying even more. I was so excited to see her. I was like, you're here? And she's like, I am. Dr. Newby or someone else, another doctor is going to assist me. And I was like, okay. And so the anesthesiologist was standing next to me, and he was like, they're starting, like, you're gonna have a baby here in a few minutes. And I was so nervous. And when she came out, she wasn't crying. And everyone's like, she's out. And I'm like, she's not crying. She's not crying. Why isn't she crying? It was probably a minute before she started crying. And I asked him, is she okay? She's not crying. And he goes, she's fine. She's okay. Because when she came out, everyone's like, look at her. She had her cord wrapped around her neck, legs, and arms. So there was no possible way that she would have come out of me vaginally, or she would have strangled herself. And I most likely would have been giving birth to a stillborn or have an emergency C-section. And so I'm very glad that my body and my mind sent me to that decision. I'm very thankful for that. And so at 10:36, we had a beautiful baby girl, born 6.4 pounds, 19 inches long, named Kinsley Marie Denny, and I became a mom. Her dad went and calmed her and just was standing with her because I couldn't, obviously. I was being stitched back up. And he brought her over, and I just cried and cried, like, there's my child. I have been waiting 9 months for this moment, and it's here. It was very bittersweet and something I will always remember, always, just like every other mom. And so, yeah, that is our labor and delivery story. It definitely didn't go how we thought it was going to go. I went in there like vaginal delivery, yeah, and it didn't happen that way. And that's okay, because you're a mom. The end point is the same. You have a beautiful, healthy child. And and so we had a C-section, and I'm okay with that. And so yeah, that is our labor and delivery story. I will insert some of her newborn pictures in the at the end of this video. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm very passionate about my delivery story, and I just wanted to tell everyone all the little details. And so don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.